Alright, so let's take a look at the ShiftCam 240mm lens for iPhone and Android devices, which ShiftCam kindly sent me for free to make this video. So first of all, the price for this lens is $225, at least as of now, because they have like a promotion thing going on their website. Of course, I'm going to leave links down below for everything for you to check out. But because this lens here is using like a proprietary S-mounting system, you'll also have to buy a proprietary case from ShiftCam, which is sold separately for additional $50. There are cases for the iPhone 15, 16, 17 Pro and Pro Max, and also the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra and Google Pixel 10 Pro XL Android devices. But if you don't have one of these devices, maybe you have like an old Android phone or an old iPhone, ShiftCam also offers like a universal adapter thing, which you'll be able to screw on your phone and basically use this lens with. Now I have here the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I just want to show you the quality of the case that you get for like $50. First of all, here on the back you have like a nice material going on to add a bit of grip when holding the phone. Then here on the side you have a cutout for the camera control button, nice clicky power button, a cutout for the USB-C port, and also cutouts for the speakers, clicky buttons in here as well. Feels very high quality. And then this is how much protection you get for the screen in terms of like having this bump in here. So it adds a bit of protection to protect your screen. And here is how the camera layout looks like. You have S-mount in here, S-mount in here, a metal piece in here to protect the camera. And overall, when holding the phone with this case, it feels very high quality. Now, if you want to turn this lens into a macro lens, ShiftCam also has a macro kit option, which includes the lens itself and also 4 magnifiers. Each magnifier is 2x and they are stackable. And each magnifier basically gives you 10x macro magnification, and in total you'll get like 40x macro magnification here, and you can basically screw it on directly to the lens and you will get something like this. And all of this costs $280, of course excluding the case here, which you'll have to buy separately. Another option ShiftCam offers is the filter kit option for $326, which includes the lens and also 3 different filters. You get 2 variable ND filters and 1 CPL filter. The variable ND filters will allow you to maintain the 180-degree shutter rule in pretty much all lighting conditions, and then the CPL filter will allow you to reduce reflections from like water, windows, and whatnot. And then if you want to buy the entire kit, which will include the lens, the filters, the magnifiers, and also the case for your phone, all of this will cost you $405, which is expensive to be honest, but I feel like because of the optical performance of this system, it's worth it if you are into this type of things. So stay tuned for the optical performance section, so you'll be able to see why you're paying so much for this system. But first of all, let's take a look at the overall design. Like I said, you have here an S-mount system, and this is basically how it works. You put the lens in and then you do like a rotation, 90-degree rotation, and you'll have your lens on the inside. And then in terms of like build quality, everything feels very solid and robust. It's entirely made of metal, and when you hold it in your hands, it feels very premium, so to speak. But because of this, it also has some heft to it, and it makes it a bit heavy, if you will. So the lens itself is 103 grams. Then with the magnifiers, it's 227 grams. And if I'm also going to include the filters, it's 270 grams in total. Now, before I move on to the optical performance, I do want to briefly talk about these filters in here. So first of all, the variable ND filters will have like a hard stop at the beginning and end. And this is very good because it's going to prevent vignetting issues, cross-polarization issues, and whatnot. And also, at least according to my tests, the color shift these variable ND filters produce is very minimal. It's not very aggressive, and it's just as good basically as other premium filters I've tried from like Freewell, Nisi, and whatnot. And then as you can see also, the size of these filters is very compact and minimal. They use like a 37mm thread option, which you can directly screw onto the magnifiers here, and also obviously to the 240mm lens. All right, now let's talk about optical performance. And first thing I want to touch on is something that is a bit misleading with the marketing from ShiftCam, and they basically claim that this lens is a 240mm lens super zoom 10x. And I don't think that's quite true, because this lens can only work with a telephoto lens on my iPhone or any other iPhone for that matter. So basically the lens in here on the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the telephoto lens, is 120mm or 5x. And with this ShiftCam lens, it will turn into 240mm. So basically in reality, this is a 2x lens. It multiplies the focal length in here by 2 times. If you're going to use the iPhone 15 Pro, for example, which has like a 3x telephoto option, this lens will turn that into 6x. And if you're using the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max with optical zoom, not like a cropped zoom and whatnot, it will do only 8x, because the optical zoom on the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max is only 4x. It's not 5x like on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. So that's a bit misleading, because in the beginning I thought you mount this lens on the main 24mm lens and then you get basically 240mm from the main camera, which is the best quality camera on the iPhone. But in reality, you mount this on the telephoto lens on the iPhone, and then you basically get 10x by multiplying, you know, the telephoto camera on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. Regardless, another thing to consider when using this lens is that you can't really like take the normal camera on the iPhone, like the 5x camera, and then put the lens on the phone and use it, because as you can see, you'll be able to see the lens here in the corner. You can only use like a camera application that will allow you to lock the 5x lens, something like Halide, for example, for like raw photography, or Blackmagic camera application for like video and whatnot. Another thing to consider with this lens is that the minimum focus distance is 5 meters, which is pretty far, but considering this is a 240mm lens, which means you'll anyway be somewhat far away from the subject, it's somewhat okay, but it's definitely something to consider before buying. And also, if you use the magnifiers, the macro lenses in here, basically, each lens will produce a different minimum focus distance, basically. So if you use the only one magnifier, it will give you like a 50 centimeters minimum focus distance. If you're using 2 magnifiers, it's going to be 25 centimeters. 3 magnifiers is going to be 16 centimeters. And then 4 magnifiers is going to be 10 centimeters. And basically, because of this, it's going to be very hard to nail focus when you are going to use the camera handheld. So I'll recommend using only a tripod when using this lens, because otherwise it's very hard to get the subject in focus. Even when shooting only with the lens itself, you'll have to use a tripod, because you get very poor stabilization performance from like the Blackmagic camera application and whatnot. So I would highly recommend using a tripod with this lens, because then you'll be able to get the absolute best, you know, control over the focus and the absolute best image quality basically from this lens. All right, and now let's talk about the optical performance, the actual performance. Honestly, I'm kind of blown away. Like the image quality I was able to get from this lens, even with the like 5x telephoto iPhone 16 Pro Max lens, which is not the best lens on the iPhone. The 24mm lens is the best one to use on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. But regardless, I got fantastic shots. Like everything looks very high quality, very sharp and very pleasing. And I was honestly kind of blown away by how good the footage looked on my computer after shooting with my iPhone and this lens, because the optical performance, as you can see from these clips in here and as you saw in the beginning of the video, like the shots look absolutely amazing. Everything is very sharp and it looks fantastic considering you are mounting a lens on top of another lens, and then the lens that you're actually using on the iPhone is not the most high quality lens from the iPhone lenses available. And also the magnifiers here, like the macro for shots you can get from this kit, is absolutely amazing. By far the best macro performance I've seen from an iPhone lens. I've tried, you know, a couple of macro lenses for the iPhone from like Freewell, I believe, and then maybe also Sandmark, I'm not really sure, but it wasn't as sharp and beautiful as this. It produces fantastic results. The image quality is absolutely stunning in my personal opinion. So to summarize, it is very expensive. The kit here is relatively expensive. You're buying the filters, the magnifiers, the case also, and the lens, but you get fantastic image quality. Like I said, I was really impressed by the optical performance of the magnifiers and also the lens itself. The build quality is fantastic, but it's a bit misleading. Like I said, it's not really 10x with a 24mm lens. It's more like 2x because you can only use it with a telephoto lens. And also, again, it's a bit pricey, somewhat bulky for some of you, but if you are into macro photography, definitely consider this kit because the results are amazing, like I said. And if you want, you know, like a very, you know, long focal length, basically 240mm and whatnot, or maybe if you're using the iPhone 17 Pro or Pro Max and you want to use the 8x, you know, cropped zoom with this, which will give you like 16x, at least in theory, then this definitely is something worth considering, because again, the image quality you get from this is absolutely amazing. All right, regardless, I'm going to leave links down below for everything I've mentioned in this video. Thank you everybody for watching. Let me know down below as well if you have other recommendations for like lenses and whatnot. And I guess I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.